a lot of flat earthers.
Like Stacey has done a bunch of like field tests and observations. She's really good at explaining things. Did you have any questions for her?
I don't have questions, but others may have questions for me. I mean, the only question I believe is why do a lot of flat earthers believe that everything else around it moves but us? That would be my only question.
Oh yeah, do you feel like taking that one, Stacey?
Yeah, I can try and respond. So you're basically saying, why do we see the stars move, but why does not the Earth move?
Correct. Why is everything that we observe outside of or inside, depending on what believer you are of the container system, move, but we don't?
So I would respond to that firstly by in the perspective you have, you are conflating the Earth and the sky as if it's the same thing and it shares the same properties and stuff. Whereas I would make the division that the Earth is foreign to the sky, or at least like the stars, for example. We can't go and touch the stars. They say we can fly to the stars and to the planets and stuff, but I've never been up there, and as far as I can tell, the Earth is stationary. I guess you could get technical and say, well, what if the Earth is actually moving in relation to the ocean and is the land as fixed as it is? But that's the furthest I could go into speculating the movement of the Earth. I don't think there's enough. Well, I don't think it's something you can prove unless you could go to the stars.
Well, I've heard the question that you can't see the curvature of the Earth, but you clearly can if you're standing on the ocean and you watch a ship depart. At some point in time, that ship will leave your view at about 20 miles, I believe it is, at the horizon, where all things essentially cease to exist, or that the edge of the world is perceived at. Even if you were to take a ship from coastline, I have not personally done it, but I have read research or watched documentaries or seen studies. But personally, I've not sought that answer, though, because I am a firm believer that you can't just only believe life and what you can perceive when there's others who've looked for these answers that you are asking for and have tried.
What about me? I'm looking for the answers. I've gone and I've looked at ships sailing away. I've done field tests. So, like, now you're discrediting what I've done for what all these astronauts claim to have done. So where do you draw the line between who you trust and who you don't trust?
Well, I've been lucky enough to be able to go on a cruise, and so departing from the cruise, I could see the land essentially disappear away from me as I had departed on from the ocean from my own observation-based look. I wasn't going on to specifically do a study, but I did watch the land disappear from behind me, and it wasn't due to the fact of, vision and or clarity. We had reached a point at which we were over 20 miles out from the coast of where we departed on, where that drops. If you were to perceive a height distance from where that measurement would be at exactly 20 miles out from the coast, you'd essentially perceive roughly a 266-foot drop. That is the most drop you'll see between that curvature. It's roughly about point. Let me find that again. I was doing some math over here. Sorry, you guys. I was doing a lot of stuff when I was quiet.
Yeah. Can I just
0.12 curvature? Like that's the degree in curvature that you would see. But yes, you can cut it. Sorry.
If I'm verbally speaking to you, the further I get away, are you going to hear me forever? Or is it the curve which is stopping you from hearing me the further I get away from you?
My human ears might not be able to hear you because I cannot perceive that sound from traveling, but other animals or things could because they have more sensitive hearing. To limit my perception based on my hearing is not a good analogy, I think.
what I'm trying to get at is with sound, like we experience sound attenuation, and in the same, like obviously it's not the same. Our sound is different to our sight, but when we get further, like we can't hear forever, the sound will attenuate and you won't hear it anymore. And in the same way, we won't see forever. So you can, I doubt that you would be the kind of person to say you can't hear anyone because of the curve of the earth. But then why are you saying you can't see things because of the curve of the earth?
Because you're comparing two different measurement type systems to equate with each other. Your hearing is, you could create a tool that will allow you to be able to hear those things that you can't hear. But you can't create a tool that can look over the curvature of the earth. So being on that ship, they had these little binoculars that were on the ship that I could look back on, look out in the ocean on, and do and see things. And these binoculars, which should have given me further perception, meaning I should have saw further than 20 miles, did not allow me to see land beyond 20 miles because that land had disappeared beyond the Earth's curvature.
Do you think if we had, like if the Earth was flat and not curved, would you be able to see, how far would you be able to see before you can't see?
It would be dependent on the tool that you are using. If I can create a tool that can amplify sounds in such a way that I cannot perceive it with my human ears, but it could measure and perceive it and interpret that audio source for me, that means I've created a tool that can do that for me. I cannot create a telescope, a magnifying glass, a set of binoculars that will allow me to see over 20 miles beyond sea level.
Okay.
You cannot. That you would have to create something that would have to refract off of something, because beyond that curvature, the angle of curvature changes at, like I said, it's like 0.12 degrees, which is roughly 266 feet lower than your perceived sea level.
And if I can't see something before any curve is meant to be there, what does that mean? So like, say if something's meant to disappear 5 kilometers away, but I've only been 2 kilometers away and it's disappeared, does that mean
then
it's curvature?
Well, no, because then that means you're potentially being, your perception of sight is being distorted by something else. You know, it could be environmental based, it could be, you know, clouds, it could be whatever. So you cannot perceive 20 miles out onto the ocean per se, because there is an environment that exists between you and that 20 miles. So your actual vision is probably about 4 or 5 miles before you start seeing ships depart off of the horizon. But it's not because of the curvature, it's just due to the amount of just things in the air that you see.
So then
but the true distance of the curvature drop off is 20 miles.
Why are you saying when you were on the cruise, the land disappeared due to curvature and not just due to the environment?
Because, like I said, there were binoculars on the ship that I could look back out on. So when we were coming and arriving to Cozumel and whatever, I could see the land approaching. They just give you that ability to be like, oh, look out in the ocean, look and see. And as we were out in the middle of the ocean, I tried to look around on these binoculars that should have amplified my vision, allowing me to see further and or beyond what my normal eyes could see, and the land was just not there. It was beyond the Earth's curvature.
Okay.
So I don't see that as being the same as using audio, because if I can create a tool that allows me to hear things I can't hear, then I should be able to create a seeing tool that allows me to see further than I normally would be able to. But you can't see beyond the curvature of the Earth. At that point, you're looking off into the sky because the Earth has a curvature to it. We're only limited to seeing that sky at 3 to 4 miles just because of natural light pollution, you know, evaporation of the ocean or whatever, some case, depending on where you may be.
So
if you're
what
looking
I'm
out
hearing...
on top of Mount Everest, though, you'll be able to see more than 20 miles. You'll be able to see, I forget how many miles. Go ahead, I apologize.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought. I was gonna say something about what I've observed of what you've been saying and like a specific perspective you have, but it's just, yeah, I've lost it now. But
Sorry, but yeah,
we're
at sea level.
definitely communicating on different wavelengths. So what do you think the main thing between this conversation, what do you think the biggest clutch between what you're saying and what I'm saying is?
I don't know. I don't know. You're stating that you went out on a specific voyage based on your research and you learned something. I believe just based on my observation, even though I didn't go out and do research, this is what I perceived based on mine own eyes, and then based on the facts that have been given to me through my own research, knowing how the Earth's curvature is, and we just can't get to the same conclusion. And I don't know why that is. And that's why people do experiments to try to get the same results to determine, which one's more accurate, and we're just not at that point. It's where that agree to disagree. I'm not saying your experiments were wrong, but maybe based on what you did versus based off of what I did in my observation were just different. And then based on the facts that I have decided to accept as true, it makes sense to me. And there are certain facts that I believe to be true that you don't believe to be true. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong. It's just that that's not your observation or belief in that aspect. Our observation, we're coming from two different standpoints.
Now, conversation, I've noticed you seem very much like in the globe model, it gives you limitations. Once a certain distance is reached, you won't see something. And therefore, when you jump into the idea of the Earth not being a globe, then you're sort of taking away limits, as if there's no more limits on site. Now, if we just keep making tools on a flat Earth, we could essentially see as far as we could see if we just make tools. But I think that's a bit unrealistic. There's still limits and thresholds that we can't engineer our way out of in this world, whether it's flat or a globe.
Yeah, she's saying that there's other limitations to vision. I guess you're ascribing whatever you saw to curvature when there can be other explanations for it. I actually missed the beginning of what he was claiming that he saw.
No, I get what she, and the same as that instance, binoculars don't allow me to see through clouds either. So, I didn't have true instruments that would allow me to be able to see beyond what our normal eyes would allow us to see. If there's atmospheric interference, binoculars is not going to be able to see through that without giving me some other third party abilities like infrared or something like that. And I didn't have that. So I can't say based on my observation that is solely true. I just believe it to be true based on the facts that I understand, that I believe in, not that I understand, the facts that I believe in, it just makes sense. So, like I said, we're at an impasse in regards to, I guess, the whole curvature thing, because you're saying you observed something and witnessed something. And I'm telling you that there's tools that have been created to do such said things, but I've not personally experienced or used those tools to say that my answer is definitively true. I'm just going based off of the fact that the Earth is a globe, and this is what I perceive based on what I know.
I'm suggesting that limits to our visibility is due to environmental things and perspective, whereas you're pinning it on the curvature of the Earth. And yeah, that's our impasse. Anyway, I do have to get back to work.
You don't think there are tools? Okay, well, have a good day.
There are definitely tools, but there's still limits. We can't play God and just make some impossible thing possible. So there's tools, you can improve your vision, but you'll still reach limits. Yeah, anyway, I'm going to head off now, but it was nice talking to you, and
nice talking
enjoy
to you too.
Everyone.
Thanks, Stacey. Great to hear from you.
Bye, Stacey.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, while you were talking there, I guess, I mean, there's a few things here. You did admit there that you're presupposing the globe. So, because you're assuming there's a globe, you're saying that curvature is causing the visual effects that you're seeing, whereas there are other explanations. So, for that reason, the curvature, I mean, your observation does not prove curvature because there could be other explanations for it. And also, you admitted you weren't really measuring things, you didn't have the right equipment. So, to just go by your belief, like you said, and you're wishing to believe it's a globe, you would also have to dismiss all of these other observations that have been made, that if you cared enough to figure out the truth about your world, you could go and see them. So, for example, Sunny on the Plain, 41 minutes after the hour, is showing you Sunset Beach to Mount Orizaba on Catalina Island, 30.88 miles, and there's 486 feet of missing curvature in this photo. So when we're talking about observations, many of these observations that have been documented, we're documenting the observer height. We're documenting the exact distance to the phenomenon that we're observing. We're plugging the numbers into the Earth curve calculator put out by globe adherents, such as the University of Washington, and we're seeing what they predict, and we're comparing it to what we're seeing in reality, and we're seeing that those things don't match up. So that's a very different argument than just saying, I want it to be a globe, so when I see things, I imagine that it's a globe, and that's the reason for it. Even though I acknowledge there might be other things, I'm just going to stick with thinking that it's a globe. So, I mean, do you see any problem with that line of reasoning?
Well, I mean, I aren't my apologies. I feel like y'all are both, but we're both in that same exact belief system. You guys are going based on your perception, and I'm going based off of my perception, also. No. So
I just explained to you the difference. I just explained to you the difference. You're just looking at something and thinking, I want it to be a globe. I think it's a globe, so it must be a globe. Curvature must be causing this, even though you just conceded to Stacey that it could be caused by other things. Whereas when we are doing the observation, so the one I just explained to you about Catalina Island, that's Sunny on the Plain. Are you in the chat there? Put at 41 minutes after the hour. Then Okay, well, I'll tag you in there so you can take a look, because there's some good demonstrations here. KW, I can't even remember your name. Oh, CR, okay. There we go. So anyway, so then also Sunny and Flat Lloyd have both put in information about the Canigou observations. Those are
so I'm looking at this picture here, and this doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know where this vantage point is supposedly from. Is this from sky, or is this from the top of a mountain?
Are you looking at the Catalina or the? Are you looking at the Catalina Flat or the Lloyd? Canigou? What one are you looking at?
Oh, technically, Sunny on the Plain.
Yeah, okay, so there's also a link there where you can read more about it, and that makes it easier to see those little labels. So this is, 255 miles, infrared image, Guinness World Book winning long-distance photographers. That's what, and Flat Lloyd's is just another version of that same thing. So you're not going to see this on a globe.
But I mean, from that vantage point, it looks like this was taken in the sky, not from the land. So you're going to get a different view distance than you were going to be able to see from land.
If you go on to their website there, that's just one of their observation. There's a whole bunch of other observations. I don't think it's taken from the sky. What makes you think it's taken from the sky? I don't think so.
It's either taken from the sky or from another light vantage point. for instance, like I said, if you're at sea level and you look out over the ocean, your vantage point of the Earth's curvature at that point is only 20 miles that you can see supposedly from the drop off road. And the reason why I keep on saying things such as supposedly and using the words in my belief is because I don't want to tell you guys it's a fact and then you guys feel offended that I'm calling y'all dumb for not accepting it. So a lot of my words where I say belief and are just my ways of just saying, you know, this I have my belief system are in the facts, and there have been facts that have been given to me, but I don't want to say that and tell you guys that you're factually wrong, because I feel like there's a belief system that exists in this as well. The observational belief.
Where are you getting 20 miles from? Sorry.
It's just
yes, where are you 20 miles from?
So there's a formula that you can use to determine the Earth's curvature based on the distance and perceived height level that you're at that you can use. I'll put it in here.
Oh yeah, Sunny on the Plains said Mount Canada is taken from another mountain. 9,800 feet height. There should still be a mile curvature blocking the view of Canada. So there you go. There's your answer of where it's taken from.
That's the formula that you can use. Actually, I'll just copy all this for you so you can see using based on the facts that were given to us. And assuming that these are facts that we have no choice but to accept. If we're assuming that, then that's where I get my distance in 20 feet is the drop off at which you would call it. So from a height distance at 20 miles out, that distance starts to drop at 266 feet relatively to 20 miles out. So if you were to shine a laser from that distance to hit a target that was 20 miles out, you would notice that from that same, if you started on a board that was 10 foot tall and you put that laser in, or excuse me, that was 50 foot tall, or excuse me, we didn't need something larger than 50 feet tall. We need something like 300 feet tall. If you were to put that at the bottom of a board that was 300 feet tall and shot 20 miles out, that laser point will wind up at 266.7 feet above the position at which it started. So that's what I mean by like height of 266 points. That's assuming that the land is perspective-wise flat and following the curvature of the Earth. So now if you're at the top of Mount Everest, though, that vantage point becomes something completely different. At the top of Mount Everest, your vantage point is then something like 220 miles out that you can see because you're at a higher elevation.
So you really don't see what I was trying to get at earlier, that you've admitted it several times that you're presupposing the globe, that you believe in the globe. Like, have you ever considered, like, if you are going to continue to debate this topic, have you ever considered, like, actually putting it to the side and considering that we don't live on the globe and accepting the Earth as it presents itself? Have you ever considered doing that?
I mean, I love science. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm a big sci-fi person. I don't think there'll ever be a chance where I'll ever be convinced that the Earth is 24/7 flat Earth. I like to give my arguments, and where somebody can give something else that's a valid argument against what I believe. I'm not here to say that you are wrong, but there are just things that I don't know that I don't have the answers for, and I can at least say that. I'll admit to when I don't have the answers to something. But when you have a mathematical structure that exists and understanding that there are multiple things at play here, like the laws of physics, the laws of gravity, the laws of, you have these things that are just true to sciences and nature, it begins to question, how can the Earth be flat? From a perspective point, yes. But overall,
just because it is, because that's how yeah, I get it. You're into sci-fi. You saying you love science and sci-fi, that told me everything I need to know. So thank you for answering my question. I mean, so you understand that what we're looking for here are empirical observations. I know it's been explained to you several times since you've been in here that this is a geometry question. It's not a science question, because, but if you were wanting to talk about science, then we would want to remain empirical and use the classical scientific method where you're testing a cause and effect relationship. I mean, I guess I shouldn't speak for everyone. I think that the so-called people who call themselves, scientists doing science, many of them are not. They are making conjectures, just like you did, usually with the presupposition of the globe, and they have gotten so far away from empirical science that it's an embarrassment to the term science. And it would be incredibly embarrassing, to the original thinkers who came up with a scientific method as a way to objectively test cause and effect relationships in our world in order to come up with an explanation of the objective reality that we actually observe.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Does anybody else have a question? We've got some new people that came in here. We've got, I don't know who we've got that's new. That's any of these people in here, Globe Believers? I don't know who Daz Waz is. Diaz was, welcome. How are you? We're doing Ladies' Night here for another hour or so.